And speaking of life, how about the future? And that is my take to introduce Manuel Pimenta, that is coming to stage to talk about how gamification can leverage other established and emerging trends like AI, machine learning, VR, or blockchain to level up on engagement. Please welcome to the stage, as soon as we get rid of the tables, Manuel Pimenta.
Hi. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you for being here. As Maria was telling you, by the way, Maria is the name of the voice that you hear from above. I'm going to talk about the future of gamification, but I sneaked something into this presentation. I'm not just talking about the trends, the tech trends, but what problems should we be solving? So, just a short introduction. I'm Manuel. I'm a Chief Experience Officer at Fractal Mind. We are your hosts today. I hope you've been enjoying Gamify. And Fractal Mind is Portugal's leading company in the area of gamification. And we also do a lot of design thinking, so not just introducing games, but also focusing on the user at the core of the experience. And we've been doing gamification in a lot of fields. So, as you can see by the size of the square, employee engagement is our core business. That's most of the projects that we've been doing are around employee engagement, but we can also apply, and as you could see from the projects that were presented, we can also apply gamification to marketing, to learning, and to events, and we've been doing that for some years now. So, before we talk about the future, just a quick baseline of what's going on in gamification. There was a prediction that Gartner threw out in November of 2012, and they said that by 2014, 80% of existing gamification projects would fail due to poor design. As you could guess, it was a pleasure to hear this as a gamification practitioner. And so, did this happen? Because we're in 2019, and the answer is, yeah, it happened. And why? Because of this. As some of the speakers have been saying, a lot of the gamification design that's being done, it's points and badges and leaderboards, and it's just that. And so there's a problem, and you throw points and badges and leaderboards, and they hope it fixes it. Sometimes it fixes it, but most of the times, if it's a big problem, it doesn't fix it enough. And even more so when you're looking at the long-term problems. So if you're looking for a short-term solution, they might be of use. But if you're looking for a long-term solution for a long-term problem, they're not enough. And so at some point, the gamification community was asking for more, but also organizations were tired of the same solutions. They were tired of going to every company that did gamification and being met with a quiz platform or a points and badges platform. They wanted more. But as you could see during this event today, there's a lot more being done. Well, format's a bit messy, but there's a lot more being done. And you listen to all these stories from Brazil, from the Netherlands, from Italy. There's a lot being done in gamification that is much, much more than points, badges, and leaderboards. Even more so when that is needed, okay? And what they're doing right, and just a little background on this, what they're doing right is they're using the theory of flow, the theory of matching your ability to solve a problem with the complexity of a problem. That's something that games do really well, okay? Games are expert mechanisms at balancing the complexity of a challenge and your ability to solve the challenge. And that's how they hook you. Because when you start, it's an easy problem because you don't have that many skills. But as you're gaining the skills, the problems get harder to solve, okay? And this happens because they balance that loop. So if there's an action to be done, there's always a trigger to incentivize you to complete the action. There's feedback, and there's an incentive to repeat the action. So these projects that you heard today are really good at doing this, okay? And this is at the core of good gamification projects. So You know the baseline? You know that a lot of organizations are tired of simple solutions. They want complete solutions. But they're also looking to the future, and they have an ear that's paying attention to a lot of the trends out there, a lot of the technology trends out there. And most of the time, when you speak about the future of gamification, somebody's going to shout out the name of this series. Does anybody know this? Can someone shout out the name? Black Mirror, yeah. So this is an episode of Black Mirror. It's a British TV series about the future. And this episode is called Nosedive, okay? And long story short, the basis for this episode is that everything you do gets feedback. And you have a score, and that score counts for everything. And so this is normally the fear when you say, hey, let's gamify everything. And they're like, well, if this happens, it might not be that fun. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is about having a clear path for the future. And a clear path for the future has two parts. The how. So how are we going to solve the problems? How are we going to use the technology that we have to solve the problems? But most of all, what problems are we going to solve? What are we looking for? What are we looking at and trying to apply gamification to? And we saw really good examples of that. So, beginning with the how, and mostly because the what is more inspiring, so I'll leave it to the end. So first level, and this is the obvious one, mobile. Why mobile? Because it's accessible, because it's immediate, and it has a lot of nudging potential. And nudging is basically just standing next to you and telling you, there's something to be done, there's something to be done. Hey, this is notification, look at this, look at me. Okay? And because current generations, millennials and Generation Z, that's the phrase that explains them all in 4 words. Right here, right now. You know? If you know a lot of millennials and Gen Z, you know what I'm talking about. They want it now, they want it here, they want it convenient, and they want it they want the best possible version. Okay, so mobile is a great way to do that. And 2 examples of that are Zombie Run, for example. So Zombies Run is a running app that, besides measuring and using GPS positioning to measure your runs and to map out your runs, it tells a story. It tells the story of a zombie apocalypse. So when you're running, you're not just running to get thinner, you're saving the world. Okay? It's a good excuse. And another example of an app that's really leveraging the power of mobile to gamify an activity is Todoist. Don't know if does someone here use Todoist, or at least know Todoist? Okay, 1 person, great. So this is a to-do list, okay? The thing that you write on your notepad, this is an app that's where you can have projects and you can have your daily tasks, but it also rewards you for completing your tasks. It gives you karma points, it's worth what it's worth, but it gives you karma points and it rewards streaks, so if you complete tasks on a daily basis, it's empowering you and you level up. The levels don't count for much, but they're a good way to give you feedback. And if you're motivated by feedback, that's going to work for you. So that app is always nudging you to do your task, get rewarded for doing your task, okay? So mobile. But there's a level 2 on mobile. It's called PWAs, so Progressive Web Apps. What are those? They're not another app. They're a web solution in a mobile format. So basically, it's an HTML application, so a web page, but it's specialized for mobile application. And more than that, it doesn't take much space because it's a web page. Okay? So instead of you having to download 10 megabytes or 20 megabytes of an application, you just go online and you have the same experience, but in a web page. And development for that is 10 times less expensive because you're doing it once. You're not doing for Android, for iOS, for Windows, well, not anymore. I have one at home. But you're doing it once, and it works in every mobile phone, okay? The user experience, it varies little from web to mobile, okay? So nowadays, you get more or less the same experience as you would have in a native application, and we can still work offline. So the big difference with progressive web applications is that you have a web page that can work offline. So you can download it for your mobile phone. You get asked normally to add an icon to to your home page, you're not installing an app, you're just setting up a little space for it to be able to work offline. But most of all, it does something that's really useful for gamification. It respects the user journey. So normally what happens with an app is that they ask you to download 20 megabytes or 50 megabytes of an app, and then you're going to know if it's good. But with a progressive web app, you access a web page, you log in like you were using a web page, you check out if it's good, and if it's good, you're going to add it to your home screen. So that makes much more sense than just, if someone told you, well, buy my product, and then I'm going to tell you if it's good. It wouldn't work. So progressive web apps are a great solution for going mobile, but still making it cheaper and making it more efficient. And good examples of that is Uber. So they really revamped their app with one mission. They wanted Uber to work everywhere. So now, the Uber progressive web app takes 3 seconds to load on 2G, because not everybody in the world has 3G or 4G or 5G. And Tinder, I don't know if you know it, even if you know it, you're not going to say it, but the Tinder app, the PWA version, takes 90% less space, and it still behaves the same way, okay? Because they did it with a progressive web app. Okay, level 3, blockchain. Now we're getting to the gritty part. What is blockchain? Who here has heard of blockchain? Even if they don't know what it is. Okay, a few hands more. Okay, so what blockchain is uniqueness on steroids. Okay? And if you know what it is, you'll find it funny. So uniqueness on steroids. Why? It's a decentralized ledger. Okay, so basically, what happens is, imagine you have money in a bank. And the way you know you have money in a bank is because that bank tells you you have money in a bank. Okay? But if someone attacked the database of that bank, nobody else would know you had money in that bank, because it was one point where they had all the information. But with blockchain, what happens is that they copy out all of the information throughout several computers, so there are other people that know how much money you have in your bank. Well, they don't know, this is all hidden, but it's the information is distributed through several computers. And that's an oversimplified version of what is blockchain. So it's a way to verify information through having several people knowing it. It's the same way as you want a story to be true, you don't tell one person. You are going to tell a lot of friends, so a lot of friends will confirm, yeah, that story is true. Okay, same principle. It was popularized by Bitcoin and Ethereum. Those were the big currencies that leveraged blockchain and made it the hype that it is today. And it really empowers one thing: digital ownership and scarcity. One thing that happened when the internet came to being is that products became digital. And so when a product becomes digital, you have an image. It's hard to say if that's the true version of that image. And with blockchain, you can add a little signature to an image, for example, and make sure that that is the single proof that that is the right image, okay? And this is really interesting when you think about collectibles. So if you have a card and somebody says that's the only version of that card, nobody else in the entire world has that card, it's worth something, okay? That's what happened with expensive paintings, for example. There's one Van Gogh, there's one Picasso painting, and it's worth that much money because it's the only copy of the painting. And this empowers a lot of businesses around blockchain. So e-commerce can leverage blockchain to really empower the exchange of products and to make sure that you're buying something and you're sure that that purchase is happening. You can have a skills market. So imagine LinkedIn, but a LinkedIn version where the feedback that you get saying, "Oh, this guy is great," was true. Okay, and imagine if you could prove that a news article was true because it had a blockchain stamp to it. Okay, so that's the power of blockchain. And there are two great examples of it. Have you heard of crypto kitties? 3 people, 4 people, okay. It's normal, it's really weird. So crypto kitties is something created on top of blockchain technology, and it's basically a Tamagotchi. Okay, so you have a cat, you create a cat, and you buy hats, and you choose the color of the skin, and the thing is, it has a blockchain stamp to it. So it's that unique cat, okay? And that might sound strange, but it's stranger if I tell you that there's evidence of an auction for one specific cat, a really rare cat, and someone bought it for $170,000, okay? And it's a digital image of a cat, okay? But it's unique. Nobody else in the world has that cat. And that's the power of blockchain. And another useful thing that you could do is use it for rewards. So if you're going to use gamification for some sort of system and you want to have rewards, you could use blockchain to prove that that reward is unique. Nobody else in the world has that badge or that, that certificate of having completed a course or that unique token that you can use to buy Bitcoins. Okay, so that's what blockchain can add to gamification. Okay, level 4, AR. Okay, so you've heard some stories around AR. And AR is augmented reality. So I think João Moura from the Portuguese police was talking about Pokemon Go. So Pokemon Go is augmented reality. And what that is you seeing the world through different eyes, through eyes that have more power, overpowered eyes. That's something that we use in games. It might work with more people, but seeing as it lasts. Okay, so you have digital add-on to visual capture. So you're capturing an image with your cell phone, and your app is adding something digital to it. It's adding a Pokemon, for example. You have no physical limitation. You can create a really amazing experience with a blank room, okay? As long as you have certain markers, you could use your cell phone to go and shop online. And imagine you are going into a shop and viewing all the products, but in reality, you're in a blank room. But the cell phone is transforming that room through augmented reality. And you can even leverage existing infrastructure because of that. So you don't need to buy, if you have a store, you don't need to buy a bigger store. You just need to go to augmented reality and make it bigger through the eyes of the cell phone, okay? And what that is inclusive disruption. So you gain the ability of disrupting the market that you're doing business in without having the extra expense of buying a new place, buying more products. No, you have a new technology that can make what you have bigger. And that's really at the core of AR. Some good examples of that is a campaign that Burger King did in Brazil, is the Burger King app. If you pointed it at a McDonald's sign, you could press burn, and the ads would burn, and you would earn a voucher to go to Burger King and eat a free Whopper, okay? And of course, Pokemon Go, where you can have Pokemon battles in your backyard, okay? Or you could go and walk to the center of Lisbon just to go catch Pokemon at 2 a.m. And I never understood Pokemon Go. Okay, so VR, it's level 5. There's one more level left. Virtual reality, a bit hard to include that in gamification, because with gamification, we don't want to change the existing experience. We don't want to take people out of the experience. We want to make the experience better. But that's really what VR does, is take you out of the experience and really make it immersive, okay? So, ultra immersive experiences. VR is a fully digital representation of reality. So all those videos that you see of crazy people with the glasses and just looking around like they were somewhere, they are somewhere because they're viewing it through a cell phone or through an Oculus Rift, and they're fully immersed in that reality. And if it has interactivity, even more so. So if they can interact with the space that they are seeing, it makes it even more powerful. It provides near total immersion, and it's a safe environment for failure. So imagine if you wanted to train a firefighter, but he was really a really new guy, a really new recruit, but you don't want him to get burned. So you put a VR glasses, and you create a scenario where you can represent the situation of saving someone from a fire. And he can go around a burning building without getting burned, okay? That's the power of VR. And of course, learning in live scenarios makes learning that much powerful, okay? Instead of sitting in a classroom and listening to someone talk like this, you could go out there and experience a situation. And the NYPD is doing that. So they are training their officers with VR. So remember from the movies that situation where the guy's walking around and an image comes up and he has to shoot it, but if it's an old lady, he shouldn't be shooting it. Now they're doing it VR, okay? And they can do it in teams because it's safe. The guns aren't real, okay? They only work in that virtual reality. So that's the power that VR is bringing. And last, AI. Of course, we have to talk about AI, artificial intelligence. Everybody's afraid the robots are going to take our jobs. But the truth is that it can be as much helpful as we want it, okay? So it's not the same as machine learning, and that's an interesting distinction to make, because machine learning is when a computer is able to look at the data it collects and make better decisions, okay? But simple decisions upon rules that are pre-programmed, okay? That's machine learning. What happens with AI is when a machine is able to create new rules, to create new models, and to think for itself, basically, okay? So that's the difference. When in machine learning, it's basically a smarter computer, okay? But AI is something that can think for itself. And imagine if you create a gamification solution that could think for itself, that could adapt to player profile. You design the solution for a context, but the player is evolving, and the solution itself is growing and getting better and creating different challenges, not just harder challenges, different challenges, adapting to the profiles. It could anticipate player needs. So it could be telling you, oh, you should be solving this now because you've been here this long at the company and you now have these skills because I measured it from the data. Now you should be doing this, okay? And it's basically scalable, customized gamification. Because you all heard the story of Wharton Winners. So imagine the hardship that it is to create a project that lasts for that long. You need people behind it making it work every day. So imagine if you have a machine that can do that for you. So that makes customized gamification scalable, okay? And yeah, it's the holy grail for long-term engagement, okay? So basically, if you want to create a project that has engagement for a long time, you will probably need AI because you're going to be hiring a lot of people for every project, okay? And training them, which isn't that hard. And the example for that isn't real, okay? This is something from a movie that's based on a novel that's called Ender's Game. And in this novel, it goes on in the future, and the military, in order to train, they have a game that connects to their brain and creates a scenario based on the way they think. And that scenario is always evolving through their decisions, so it's AI. And this is something that they used in the movie and in the novel to make their military better because it was always evolving and creating different scenarios specialized for that person, okay? And imagine if we could do this in a simple manner, and it's not that hard to do, okay? You just need investment. Okay, so we talked about the how, but the fun part is now. What problems should we be solving? What use is it if we have the technology, but if we're not choosing the right problems to solve? And if you want to find a good solution, you should be finding a good problem first. And good problems are normally hard to solve. And that's the thing. Wicked problems are problems, or social or cultural problems, that are difficult or impossible to solve because of a number of reasons, because of lack of money or because they connect to a number of other problems. And an example of that is citizenship. So we saw a good example of a first solution to the challenge of civic participation. And imagine if you could create real engagement, involvement in politics and communities. Imagine if you could increase voting participation. So the European elections, the last one, you had 60% of people not voting. 40% made the decision for all of us. That makes no sense. Okay, so imagine if you could have 90% of people voting. That would be an informed decision. Imagine if you could have full community awareness, and you could have full community proactivity. Everybody wanting to make a change. Everybody aware of their surroundings and wanting to solve problems in their communities. And imagine if instead of 1 person trying to solve a problem, you had 1 million people trying to solve a problem. That's crowdsourcing, okay? And this is something that gamification can be used for in order to solve it. And finally, Imagine if you not only discover problems in your community and say, oh, I have a hole in my street, but also provide solution. I have a hole in my street, and I also have a cousin, I have a cousin that has a company that can solve that problem. Maybe we could work together, okay? You would have to prove you didn't make the hole first, but it could be a good way to think about it. And you have two interesting examples. So MyPolis, you got familiar with that, but Samantha Bee, she's a presenter and she's a TV personality in America, and she created an app during the last elections, so didn't work that much, but she created an app in order for people to be more familiar with political parties and political candidates. And the only thing that app did was give you information and check if you knew the information, if you got the information. Just ask you questions and see if you were getting the hang of it. And just by that, she really increased participation in the election. And it was a simple solution. Imagine if you could apply all of those trends to these problems, okay? Another wicked problem, sustainability. We saw some solutions for that too. So not only is it essential, it's trendy, okay? Which is probably good because it's going to bring a lot of funding to it. So in case you haven't noticed, the planet needs a hand, okay? It needs our help. And imagine, I'm going to say this word a lot, imagine if you could have awareness of actionable decisions that you could be taking, new habits that you could be having to make the world better. Because we're not solving it, not because we don't want to, it's that because we don't know what to do, okay? Imagine if every action you did counted, because it does. If you turn off the faucet, if you take shorter showers, it counts. Imagine if you get feedback on that. Imagine if you could bring purpose, mastery, autonomy, all of these emotions that games are really good at doing, if you could bring them to these problems and go for long-term and short-term, because the planet needs a hand now. Okay, you could think about long-term, we should probably be solving it now. And you have some examples of that. You have Julebug, which is an app that works mainly in the US, that has some examples of some things you could be doing. It challenges you to do some fun things that teach you about good habits that you could be having to improve on the environment. And you have Recycle Bank that works in some US cities, where you could go and bring your recyclable items and get some points that you could use to get discounts for stores, okay? So you're getting paid for recycling. And finally, and this one is close to heart, education. Why? Because it is the silver bullet, okay? There are a lot of things you could solve that could make the world better, but if we solve this, we could make a lot of things better. If we educated people about civic responsibility, we would solve the first. If we educated people about sustainability, we would solve the second. Okay, so education is at the core of what we should be doing, because it has the same model since the Industrial Revolution. And you already saw a couple of startups that are doing some attempts at solving this with games and gamification. There are already huge results with games and non-formal education. Okay, so it's not something that we're going to test if it works. It works. It just needs to get better and bigger. Okay? And this will work from STEM education to corporate to soft skill learning. It will work in every place that you apply it to. And again, it's at the root of almost every problem. And there are people trying to solve it. You have, and it's a change management challenge, of course. It's not about how we're going to teach them. We know how we're going to teach them. It's how we're going to change the whole system around education. And you have Duolingo, which is a fun app to learn a new language. It uses gamification really well to make learning a language really fun, okay? And you have Classcraft, which is World of Warcraft for a classroom. So you're not a student, you're a magical character. You don't have homework, you have missions, you have quests. And every time you complete a quest, you grow as a character, you gain experience points, you have new skills, you can even unlock some questions for the quiz next week, okay? And this was created by a teacher that had a friend that was a web designer, so that helps. And he created it because he felt the need to do it. Okay, so we have the technology and we have the problems to solve. So we probably should be solving it. And that's what gamification can really bring to the equation. This is from a game called Journey. Don't know if you know it, but the game tells you this when you start playing. You know you are those guys because when you move the joystick, those guys move. You know you have to go to the top of the mountain because it's a desert and there's a mountain with a light on top. Okay, so you think, yeah, I should go there. There's a party or something. And then you start moving and you start interacting with the scenario, and that's how you learn what to do. Not a book, not a manual, not an onboarding tutorial, not 2-week internship. No, you're playing the game and you're learning about the game organically. And that's what we're trying to bring. Imagine if we could use all of these technologies that are at our disposal, I choked a bit, at our disposal to solve these huge and amazing problems. And that's what I had to tell you. Thank you for coming to Gamify. Thank you for listening. And we'll be here next year, so be sure to show up. Thank you.